Female soldiers are facing an enormous threat, but it isn't from terrorists. It's from sexual predators in the ranks of our military. Joining me now to talk about the problem of rape within our armed forces is investigative journalist Rick Outzen. You know, Rick, September 1991, I remember, was the tailhook legacy, I suppose, as you can say, left with the military. And it's almost like the military didn't learn anything from that. The level of people being raped in the military, women being raped in the military, is just at an all-time high. And I'm just wondering, what is it that's happening? Why can't they see the connection between their need for discipline and the willingness of people to enlist?
Well, they're looking at a position now that the statistics coming out of the Pentagon right now are 15% of who they recruit have either already committed a rape or attempted to commit a rape. They're recruiting people, sexual predators. This is a target-rich environment for these guys, and there's no punishment for them. They prosecute less than 10% of the reported attacks, and there are another 12,000 that don't even get reported on an annual basis. So for a predator, a sexual predator, this is a target-rich environment.
Well, I mean, it sounds like what the MO here, Rick, and this story that you've done is just an excellent story. Your investigative journalism is always good, but I think you're following this story, of course, from documentary that has been done about this very topic, the invisible war. And as I look at the story that you're telling and the story that documentary told, it's not much different that the military is doing from what the Catholic Church did. And that is, when somebody commits a horrendous act, move them somewhere else. And as a matter of fact, the military actually gives them promotions and victimizes the people who come forward and say, look, I was brutally raped. You tell the story about a woman named Nan. How about telling us that story, if you would?
Well, Nan entered the military. She actually wanted to be a missionary in the military, joined the Navy, eventually worked at NAS Pensacola. She was raped by her commanding officer, by another person in her unit, and then was raped again in the military hospital when she was sedated. And this is a story that I kept hearing over and over again. It's not just one-time an occurrence. These women and males, 1 out of 100 males are raped in the military. They're serial rapists that they're dealing with. And the commanding officer, who's supposed to be the one who investigates this, is oftentimes investigating himself or one of his drinking buddies. And they always blame the victim.
Where was she stationed that this occurred, Rick?
NAS Pensacola, in Pensacola, Florida. Okay,
so this repeatedly raped different people. What they do is they move her through the system.
Right.
She actually, my memory of the story is she actually asks for a hearing on it. She wants to have a private hearing that she should be entitled to. By right, by code, she's entitled to a hearing. They deny her the hearing, and then they move the people, one of the people at least that raped her, they move them up in a promotion process. Did I get that right?
No, you got it exactly right. She called for a closed private captain's mask, hoping that would be a chance that she could talk one-on-one with the captain. They wouldn't even let her have that, which by right, anyone, any serviceman, any sailor has that right, and they denied that at her. They just sent her off to family services and said, listen, they'll take care of it. Yeah, and it was so sad because this was. When she talks about it now, it's almost, this is part of what you have to do as a sailor. It's part of what the females have to put up with. And it's the movie.
Rick, I noticed in your story you talk about the fact that Nan, that her own counselor, by the way, the military sent her to a counselor rather than investigating this and charging anybody or even reprimanding anybody or taking anybody to trial. The thug who raped her is promoted. Now, the military then sends her to a counselor, and the counselor advises her not to do anything about it. I mean, So where does this leave Nan? Where does this leave Nan, and where does it leave the person or the people who are most responsible for the suffering that she went through?
Well, Nan is pretty much run out of the service. I mean, she discharges as soon as she can. She spends years battling depression and the after effects of the rape. And a lot of them, the military now has come up with a term called military sexual trauma. So they actually have their own term for it now. The attacker moves up through the ranks, has more victims, does more of this, completely unpunished.
We've seen this now, these stories, of course. I started this discussion about the tailhook story of 1991, where you had a two-day, you had an affair taking place with the military, where there, story after story of people who were tending the tailhook being raped, being sexually molested in every kind of way. Then the military has these long hearings that come out of that. They say, no, we're a new military now, we're handling the problem now, and we start believing that it's solved. It's anything but solved. Would you agree with that? As a matter of fact, the numbers are getting worse, not better.
It really is. It's 45% up with the Navy just in the last 5 years. The Air Force Academy, Mike, that's another area where they, in 2003, 20% of the females in their graduating class in 2003 said that they had been sexually assaulted. And they've been saying that they've got a new system and a new thing. Well, they had 23 rape victims 2 years ago, 30 last year. It's climbing. It's not going away because there's no punishment for these perpetrators. There's no reason for them to stop because they're going to get excused for whatever they do.
What is the military's rationale other than just absolute damn stupidity, other than just pure stupidity? What is the rationale for allowing the people, these perpetrators, not only allow them not to be investigated, not to be prosecuted, but then giving them promotions? How is that any different than what we see with the Catholic Church? It's the same thing, isn't it? I mean, just ignore the obvious and move everybody through it, right?
That's right. Well, they're going to hold on to the power of command. And we also know that the Supreme Court has said that these soldiers, these sailors, these Marines don't have the right to sue the federal government. So they're in a world unto themselves. They don't have to answer to anyone. They don't have to go to congressional hearings if they don't want to. There's nothing that we can do short of changing the law and requiring independent investigators and let them go to civilian court system.
But Rick, isn't that what we expected after the tailhook saga? Isn't that what we expected after tailhook? Everybody was saying, oh, I'm glad that happened. I'm glad it surfaced because now the military is going to be different. Now they're going to act like adults rather than children in the way that they deal with this. This is like a damn frat party taking place right within the military, and nobody's doing anything about it. I saw they had, you had March 13th hearing, Senate Armed Services Military Personnel Subcommittee. You had Kirsten Gillibrand from New York that held hearings. The stories that came out of those hearings were horrendous, Rick. Why don't you relate just how bad, what did we find in those hearings?
Well, they had men and women come before them and talk about how they were raped while they were there, males that were raped, females that were raped, how they were made to be the victim, how in many cases the attacker was promoted, made Airman of the Year. It was a bizarre series of stories that in anywhere else in the world, except maybe the Catholic Church, we would be upset about and be calling for people's heads. But again, people go unpunished. There's nothing to stop them from doing it again and again. Mike, this is how crazy it is. After the Air Force came out with their academy and their study, the military said they were going to really get serious. They created an awareness campaign. Its motto was, "Ask her when she's sober." That was their motto.
Rick,
blame the victim.
Look, in Pensacola, you told the Nan story, wasn't the person that was responsible, one of the people responsible, they were actually the commander.
Right. It was her commanding officer.
Commanding officer at NAS, and that occurs. And it's just one of the stories. I mean, look, there are 2,000, something like, I think your story talked about 2,400 or so rapes every year, that in only 240 proceed to trial. 2,430 something.
Those are reported rapes, Mike. Those are only the reported. There are another 17,000 that aren't reported because the personnel know nothing's going to happen with it.
Okay, so what is it that the military, when you ask the military, what are you going to do? What is it that we hear? What is their new idea this time? After Tailhook, what is the new thing they're telling us that they're going to do that probably will not occur?
Well, what they always say is that they're going to get more serious about it. They're appointing, the Air Force has a pilot program now where they're appointing some special investigators that are going to look into it. But they're still going to be answering to the commanding officers. So it's not going to be outside the system. And these women, I tried to interview 6 different victims. I was only able to get 2 that were willing to come to me because the other 4 were scared to death. They're still dealing with the trauma. One was in the military. She felt repercussions were going to happen. These people are scared of their commanders, scared of their teammates.
You mean today, even today as we speak? Is that what you're telling us?
Yes.
So as we speak, as you continue this investigation, I know your ability as investigative reporter. I know you will not let this one go. How much resistance are you getting from the military right in your backyard?
Again, they take a privileged talk. They don't want to talk about these. These are, they want to use the right of privacy. They can hide behind HIPAA. They can hide behind everything. But the stories are coming. They're going to continue to come.
Rick Outzen, stay with it. I'll tell you what, it's a story that needs to be told again and again, and I want to have you back on to talk about it. Rick Outzen, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Mike.
Rick Outzen is an investigative journalist and the publisher of an independent weekly.